Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator here, and tonight, on the 7th day of Krampus, I'm going to be joined by Mrs. Waspinator to discuss her character and the setting for the new Last Shire campaign here on the Team Waspinator channel. Okay, so I guess the basic plan here is just so you feel comfortable with the character and a bit more comfortable with the setting that the character finds herself in. We're just gonna, I guess, clarify a few details.
Because we're going forward from this starting scenario and expanding the world. You've expanded the map.
Speaking of which, I guess we can put that into your new character folio. I got you.
Your new character folio, which has my character in it.
Yeah. So, what? Without me giving input as to the stuff that I'm thinking, like, what is your impression on who this person is? Who is Nopheria? Like, and before this all began, like what?
She's a diminutive, uncharismatic person. Well, what did we say? She does some kind of intricate metal work.
Probably, since she's low strength, high dexterity.
Right.
Yeah.
But not a jeweler. She's a smith.
Yeah, yeah.
So she's probably doing the ornate carvings on weapon hilts or something.
Okay.
And then she gets passed over, or for some, like, a promotion type thing, or she's not moving. She doesn't get the job she wants. She's not getting the credit she wants. And she...
Well, we were going to have it where she was working for the Dwarves Guild, which is like the big international organization of dwarves that controls a lot of trade and commerce and manufacturing in the world. To be like specific about what happened, like maybe she got passed over for a promotion, that like she was like senior in whatever her department was, but like a younger, newer dwarf went ahead and got the promotion of, you know, to oversee the department or something, because there is like dwarf nepotism going on heavily in the Dwarves Guild.
Well, of course, it's a Dwarves Guild.
Yeah, they employ all sorts of people, but dwarves control everything. So, and also, like, you know, you've noticed over the years that there's just certain information that like the humans and half elves and half orcs and the other people who might be in the guild's employ and might be considered guild members, there's things that they're just never told about. Left in the dark, like all the actual plans going on, and what the Dwarves Guild is up to is, if you're not a dwarf, you don't get to know. So that might have built up some bit of resentment. So, like, what exactly is it that she tried to do to strike at them? Like some sort of petty theft, or was she trying to like steal some company secrets? Or
I figured it was just like, I'm gonna rob the safe and take off.
Okay.
I don't think it was a well thought out, like...
Alright. Well, since we have it that, like, the sheriff knows that you did this, and that's why you're working for the sheriff, at least here at the beginning.
Yeah.
And he's not gonna, like, rat you out, you know, you do this for him, and he'll hide it. Now, I guess the question is did he catch you in the act?
Yeah.
Or did you get away with it, and he figured it out that it was you and not someone else? Not some, like, petty crook.
And then he made me give it back, and he's not going to tell anybody? It seems like he probably caught me.
Okay. And then maybe felt sorry for you because of your youth. Well, relative youth.
He probably felt sorry for me because I'm, like, awkward and not charismatic and trying to work in a Dwarves Guild. Maybe he also has problems with the Dwarves Guild.
That's possible.
And he's like, I get it.
He's got to deal with them.
You still can't do that.
On a political level, he's got to deal with them, but it doesn't necessarily mean he likes them or trusts them.
And, you know, obviously I'm not going to get anywhere in that system.
Okay.
He takes pity on me.
Alright.
Figures I might be useful in some way. At the very least, he can send me off to get killed.
No, he brought back a prisoner, which is more than he expected, so...
Yeah. Yeah. And apparently he's going to let me hang out and, like, interrogate.
Well, my reasoning, the reasoning as was designed for this original adventure scenario is this is still all an issue of, like, it's outside of the jurisdiction of the Shire, and because he's a sheriff and not like a military kind of thing, like they're real strict regulations on what he's allowed to do. He's not in charge. He's not the mayor of Hampshire. He's not one of the little halfling barons that all collectively make all the major decisions in the Shire. So his impetus for wanting a player character to man and become intimately involved in the investigation is that they're going to have to be able to go off and take care of this. But so they need to have information. They need to be able to work together. If it's not you, he's going to have to hire or find somebody else who's not an official, officer. He can't send his own deputies to deal with this because that's still him breaking his jurisdiction rules. Probably because it would interfere somehow with the treaty that the Shire has with Wolfhold, which is the neighboring goblin territory that's just to the north of the Shire. Let me grab the map over here. Let's see. Like up here, this is Wolfgate, and this is the bottom of the Wolf Hills. So above the Applewood Forest, there's an area about roughly the same size as this. That's hilly and forested, and that's what goblins control that. In this setting, this is a latter-day D&D setting. If classic D&D was like the third age of the world, this is the fifth age of the world. The great world-spanning civilization has come and gone, and it's kind of almost back to the Dark Ages, where you have these little pockets of civilization isolated by long stretches of wilderness. But during the reign of the world of the big human kingdom, what's called the Old Kingdom in the setting now, back before it turned to devil worship, one of the early things they did is the humans made a point of emancipating goblins from hobgoblins. Hobgoblins are believed to be extinct, and they basically, freed goblins from their centuries and eons of constantly being enslaved by other races, and finally gave them a chance to kind of develop their own thing. They're still goblins, but they have their shit together a bit more. More of them know how to read. They're actually able to conduct trade and stuff. And in the wake of the Orc Wars and the near extinction of the Halflings 100 years ago, the Halflings of the Shire have made a alliance with the neighboring goblins, kind of as we'll cut you extreme deals on some grain and stuff if you provide some troop coverage and stuff. So the Halflings don't really do much of their own security. Goblins kind of run their own security. But because of that might be why Sheriff Matham is limited in his ability to send his own men outside of the Shire, because then that would be him treading on the toes of the goblin military forces. So everything. So that's why he needs some freelancers. And so, in order for you to be able to do the investigation, you have to be involved in the interrogation of the prisoner you brought back if you're going to continue to serve in that function and don't want to just randomly wander around the world until you find something else you'd rather do. But you've said that you feel kind of responsible already because you inadvertently got one of these farmers killed.
Yeah, well, I killed him.
Yeah, and you're curious as to why these yokels are doing this stuff and why they're kidnapping people. Who the guy with the cloak was, maybe not. How he fits into all this. The guy's original mutterings about under a threat from a witch.
Right.
That could mean a lot of different things.
Right.
In this world.
I'm a little bit curious about that stuff.
Okay.
But mostly I just feel bad.
All right. And we were going to say that she was from this land. As I was saying, this is a latter day D&D setting. Elves are kind of in the process of finishing their great retreat from the world. You still see them pop up here and there, but the wood elves rarely ever come to town anymore. High elves, you see them maybe in some cities out in the east, but you almost never see them out in this part of the world. Dark elves are still kind of an unknown underground quantity. Half elves are now the most populous form of elf. You find them in almost all human settlements. There'll be a little segment of the population that's half-elf. They breed with themselves often. Not consistently, because they don't want to go to that level of inbreeding, but whenever they're able to bring elf blood back into their bloodlines, they do, because they're trying to preserve elf culture. But they don't do it right, because they're still also kind of just like a subculture of the larger human population of this age.
Yeah.
Half-orcs are kind of similar, just a bit different. Also, orcs are extinct. So, the Old Kingdom, about halfway through the rule of the Old Kingdom, the king had married a succubus and created a bloodline of tieflings, and that slowly, absorbed all the noble houses of the age, and the kingdom, like all the old beliefs in the old human gods, were banned and forgotten and replaced with devil worship and stuff. And at the end of that, druids and non-human cultists like elves who still believed in Corlon and Rilithane and stuff like that, they all get together and inspire like a popular uprising. And in the midst of that, a bunch of orcs out of the north storm across civilization because their leader was this orc general named Bloodwrath that had this vision from the orc god Grumsh that halflings were going to be responsible for the extinction of orcs. And so he was going to like gather all the clans of orcs out of the north together and just go on a big bloody war and wipe all the halflings out. And for like almost a decade, they finished the job of destroying the old kingdom. That like if it hadn't happened after the Civil War and the uprising, maybe society would have kind of figured out what the hell it was doing, and some sort of new system would replace the old one. But the orcs wrecked everything and have created this Dark Ages environment that it's now in. They got real close to wiping out the halflings, but at the very end, one final alliance of a group of elves, humans, and dwarves got together and stopped them just south of where this game takes place. This is the very last pocket of halflings left in the world. The peoples around it are kind of protective of it. They have humans and, by extension, half-elves living amongst them as labor, but they don't really get to be citizens in the Shire. So your character would probably be, just an average citizen. Like not everyone in this world is an adventurer, obviously. Like dragons are believed to be extinct. A lot of the classic monsters are kind of gone in some ways, or just legend, or exist in other fashions. But my thought is that your parents would maybe be living down in Sheepfold, which is mostly like the guild town, and that you would come up to live in Big Town, which is the human ghetto outside of the main halfling city of Hampshire.
Right.
Hoping to like maybe get some work at like the guild smithies up there instead of having to work in the crowded conditions down by Sheepfold. And
immediately commit crimes.
Maybe not immediately. I mean, you said your character is 35, so
Yeah, which in
that,
half elf is.
Yeah, it drags.
But
still, it's long enough. You could have spent a good 10 years putting in time in that company and feel like justified and like I shouldn't have been passed over.
Okay.
But like that incident of trying to make that theft is like maybe that was the inciting incident that took you from just being a guild artisan to actually being a rogue. And so now, like, I guess it's up to Nopheria to figure out what to do with that roguishness. She doesn't necessarily have to be a thief, as seen by the kind of archetypes that she can choose when she gets to 3rd level. There's a lot of different ways you can interpret how rogues are. They can be like an agent spy, a detective, an anti-thief. They're actually them and rangers are both really good to play law enforcer characters. Because like your skill set is designed to, already to match the people you're going after. It relies a lot on the same kind of shit anyway. So, she's like not wed to having to be a master thief or anything like that. So, just because she made an attempt to steal something.
Okay.
But she's still, like, it's stealth and all that kind of stuff are her forte. And so there's ways to use that. It's just finding what you want to do with it. Or figuring out how to best use them in any given situations you might find her stuck in from time to time.
Which can be complicated because there's lots of math involved.
Yeah. What sort of questions do you have about either her or the world you're in?
Well, what type of people am I likely to encounter? If I go south, it's going to be more human-y.
Well, like the entirety of the Shire is primarily halflings. Like most of the farms, the settlements, the housing, even Sheepfold is still a majority halfling town, but by a thinner margin. And it's saying that there's a larger population of dwarves there. You might be talking about like 20 or 30 out of a couple hundred people who live in the town. And these are medieval levels of township. A town is not 10,000 people; it's a couple hundred people. A village is maybe a couple dozen.
Okay.
Hampshire, the humans would seem like a town because of its size, but to halflings, this is pretty much a city almost. It's just everything's kind of small and quaint looking there.
Okay.
But most places you go, you'll find a majority of halflings and maybe some human half-elf.
What about over here?
Over here, this is largely unclaimed meadowlands. Further this direction, there's a large forest called the Green World. There's a wood elf kingdom there, and also some sort of dwarf holdings called Dwarfheim.
Okay.
And beyond that, there is a kingdom called Rendariat that occasionally their traders come down from. It's a human kingdom.
So as I'm around this area, the people I'm most likely to come in contact with are halflings, dwarves, and maybe a wood elf.
Wood elves least, like I said, the wood elves don't really seem to come into civilized town.
Yeah,
they
but
do
if I'm
live
wandering
relatively.
around
They're a couple days
here,
away.
then
Yeah,
it's possible.
It's possible, certainly. But mostly halflings, dwarves. There's humans and half elves living among in here too.
Right.
You'll mainly find them in Big Town and in Sheepfold or your main. In Loggerhead, that's a dwarven
But
logging
just I meant
operation.
just like as I'm roaming around the countryside, those are
Aside from this village of humans, that's just east of the border. This is mostly like open wilderness. Like
okay.
I said,
So this is humans.
yeah, it's a little village of humans.
Okay.
And considering that the people that you had met had mentioned some shit about a village and the guy rode off in that direction, you might want to inquire about anyone know anything about this Freeman's Farms or anything like that? Like, you would know about all the locations on this map for having been raised around the area. But, like, it's just a little tiny farming village. It's independent. It's not part... That's why it's called Freeman Farms, because it's just a bunch of people trying to farm out in the middle of nowhere without having anyone tell them what they can do.
Can I wander around and explore Big Town? Can I go talk to my neighbor?
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
go to the grocery store? Okay.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff will probably be summarized because there's really nothing to do there. And it's just kind of declarative. I'm going to spend my morning doing this. And I'll
You
be
don't
like,
want me
okay.
to roll for
You don't-
dexterity to see if I can
No.
go down the cereal aisle without falling
No.
over and hitting my
No.
head? Are you sure?
Like I said, that first introductory scenario was to run you through most of the basic
I'm just
game
saying,
mechanics. So,
wouldn't it be more fun?
like, in a lot of occasions, you probably can, through your own words, talk your way through a lot of things without having necessarily... It's only when it's a question as to whether or not this person may or may not agree is do you need the persuasion roll. But you don't need it for every last fucking suggestion. And if you yourself can say something smart that the character I deem would buy without having to be persuaded because they just see the logic of it, kind of a thing, that, you know, like, it's like I said, the opening scenario was designed just to, like, kind of showcase all the basic dynamics of how 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons works, at least in the way I run it, which is already kind of I streamline a few things.
Okay.
Like, I don't make people constantly re-roll initiative between every combat round and shit like that. In fact, I'll just... Your initiative is your initiative for the entire game session. It's kind of like, are you having a good day or a bad day? Kind of a thing, so... And
Okay.
because also just years of running all these different games and different versions sometimes of the same game, like in my head, especially in the middle of playing, it like rules blur together. So my goal as someone running is just to like not be too repetitive with what people are having to do, and that it seems fair, you know, that I'm not like leaning the thumb too much on either side of like I want my things to have victorious and it's got to go my way, or also being too lenient and like, oh well, you know, yeah, they did enough damage to cut your head off, but you know, maybe they didn't. Because I don't want you to be upset that you got to re-roll your character now. So your character wakes up 5 days later in a prison, and there's a rat with a key. You know, like you know,
yeah.
it's a balancing act. But like I say, I don't view it as a competitive. It's not a competitive sport. It's more like I'm coaching my players to something. I like the point of coming up with the adventures is I want them to get to the end of it and succeed. I don't want them to be killed by the evil vampire guy. I want them to save the land from the evil vampire guy. So. But I can't just hand it to them, and so yes, that does involve a lot of randomizing things that to thwart their plans and force them to have to think of something else.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what if I need to get thwarted from getting my cereal? So I have to go in the woods and look for nuts.
It depends on where you're shopping. Now, like, it's like if you like your character's like out in the wilderness for several days and you've run out all your rations and like you need to go hunting, then I probably would have to like do some sort of like rolling for you to like stir up some deer or a rabbit and see if you can actually hit the fucker.
Yeah, because that's not just going to the grocery store.
And since your character does have the survival skill, despite being a relatively, you could call her city folk, but kind of a townie, I figure maybe that's part of just like the crappy way that half elves try to convey elf culture is like they did teach you to go camping and how to start a fire and how to track, but like you never use it. It's the way like middle class people go out into the woods, but you're not really out there the way wood elves live or something. Really, half elves are more descended from high elves than anything else, and probably out of the various elves out there. And that's really probably why the high elves have disappeared. They haven't been leaving; they've just been being bred out because they're isolated from each other, and they end up having human paramours and all that kind of shit.
Everybody wants to have sex with a high elf.
Yeah, and vice versa. High elves like to fuck everything.
Oh well, yeah, they'll definitely breed themselves out with that attitude, or in to all the other species, races. What do you call them? Races
in this game. It's really more appropriate to call it species, but that's like the older way of thinking of like the really older way of describing race as opposed to the modern ways of using these words. Like class also doesn't quite match how we use class in a modern context.
Yeah, no, I'm joking about the grocery store, but like, when you were talking about you might want to ask if anybody knows what's going on with the human farm up there, and I'm relating it back to like video game experiences where the game tells you, like,
I could draw
in this town you can ask questions of people, and then you go ask questions, and most of the people still go, derpa derpa, I'm a farmer, but then the one you're supposed to talk to actually tells you stuff. I don't know how that works generally in this type of game. So like, there's an inn here, can I go have a drink? Can I talk to somebody at the bar? Like, what is the experience like?
It's different, like, it's a bit like, there are most.
What do I want
most
to do that,
people, though? Like most people, there are like the blind set background NPCs that like they're going about their thing. They don't have anything to say or contribute. But generally, like most like specific locations, item shops, inns, places where like established NPCs that have names, like I said, like right off the bat, the sheriff, you can ask him questions about what would the sheriff know about these things. He might be able to direct you to other people or places. Because like, I guess I should draw up a focused in more map on these two places, because you should like your character should know the layout of the town and what's already there. It's like there should be a ton amount of secrets to them.
Like, is it worth wandering around and figuring out?
Or you just know. Like, well, like, it's established relationships. Like, the thing about role-playing games is, like, none of it's real until you've interacted with it. And the act of interacting with it, you're giving birth to it, and so you're like, you're solidifying something that was just raw potential ahead of time, and so, like, it shapes the world. If you never go to a certain store in the town, that store just doesn't really exist, and eventually kind of disappears from the map in a way. It's irrelevant. The characters you meet tend to end up being important because they're the only people that really exist. Because, like I said, it's like as you touch them, they're created. So, because even if I have like a bunch of like list of like, go to the item shop, there's so-and-so runs it, and they might know this, but as I say, if you never go there, then it's not real, and depending on how you interact with it, or how things have gone in the game, where it's like, well, I originally didn't intend for this character to have this bit of information, but you need to talk to somebody who can tell you this, so I fudge it, now it lends them more importance than I might have originally envisioned for them. Like I said, there's a real freeformness for both the people playing and the people running it, where it's this constant merging chaotic soup. It's a real unique form of art, really, in a way. It's
so it's more like, okay, I get what you're saying. Which is, again, that's different. I mean, there are lots of ways in which it's different from a video game, but in that in part of your plot point, have to go to the inn and talk to Ted. Because
never
if
have
I
to.
don't end up doing that, you're not going to keep prompting me with other side characters. You'll just put Ted, or you'll give Felicia Ted's dialogue, and she'll be over here. Because if I need to know that,
or but
you
there's
might have
also
points
like
that I need to know, but you don't have necessarily a place or a person that has to give me that.
But I won't necessarily do that with everything, because there still has to be advantages to going to certain places. There are certain things and details and clues
that only happen at when you go to the.
And also, like, these games aren't quite so plot wedded as video games or books and movies are, where like the freedom to like divulge, and there's other things going on in the world, which like as you go along, it's like, well, shit, that also sounds like a really interesting plot line. Do I keep finishing the one I'm doing, or like this sounds like this might actually be more important?
Yeah.
But I should at least get this resolved and come back to it, or if not coming back to it, now that it's been set in motion because you interacted with it, how is it going to change and evolve on its own without you touching it? You know, can it make it worse, or will it make it worse to interfere with it? It was the last game I ran. With Forgotten Realms that I started with the Essentials kit, that was like just me like having several published D&D adventures all running at the same time, because I really didn't know what to do with Forgotten Realms, because I've never liked Forgotten Realms because it's too specific everywhere, and like I don't have to like memorize all that shit about someone else's setting. I can make my own setting where everything's got a thing going on, and that way I own it better in my head. When I'm the one who figured out where the hills are and what lives in those hills, and what the stupid made-up name is. It's my stupid made-up name, and I don't necessarily agree with how they use snake people and just all that other kind of shit. You know, Jan T should not be living that fucking far north. I don't care if it's a swamp. It's a swamp in medieval Germany. You don't have snake people living in medieval Germany. Take that shit south. You're a big person living in a world full of largely of halflings and their goblin security forces.
Right.
They're friendly and nice and love trading with people and talking with people, but they don't really like living around the big people. How much that is just kind of like a kind of a nervous tick they developed in the last 100 years after the orcs almost wiped them out, or if halflings are always kind of low-key racist and you just don't notice unless you're actually living in their lands. Because you wouldn't, like, when they're living in a human city somewhere else, like, they don't get to set the rules. But like everyone, like after 10 o'clock at night in Hampshire, you got to get the fuck out and go back to big town or go squat somewhere, because they don't want big people unless they got like papers and shit for it. And they have goblins patrol the streets at night.
So the sheriff paid me, right?
We assume he did give you 50 gold for bringing back the bounty.
Yeah.
He brought him a prisoner, so
yeah. So he did. He paid me.
Yeah, you've been paid. You've been paid a good amount of money.
So I'm not just like being extorted.
No, not at all.
Also,
you do
so
him a favor.
So I can sort of become a contractor at this point. We can kind of forget about the other thing, maybe eventually.
You've already like, hey, you brought him a prisoner. That's gonna make him look good to his uppers and shit. Look, I'm getting shit done. I employed some agents, taking care of border security, help him in whatever his political goals are. Yeah, anything you want to know about, or talk about and argue over your sidekick here, anything that you're like, yeah, I really don't like this, could we change this, or... I guess we're going with Boone as the pronunciation for B-U-N-E. I find it easier to say Boone Reverence. That's weird, but it has some amount of ring to it.
Easier to say than what? Bune?
Bune. It doesn't have a little umlaut thing over it, so...
No. Boone Reverence.
But she's just a tiefling noble with the expert sidekick class.
She has a set of fine clothes.
She does, indeed.
What is infernal?
It's the language of devils.
Why does she know devil language?
Because she's part devil.
She's part devil.
They all come with infernal. It's actually probably pretty well practiced on this world by the upper society because of the tieflings having so infected nobility for so long that even after the collapse, even non-tiefling nobles probably would know Infernal just out of habit. Kind of like, sophisticated Brits and Americans knowing French for no fucking reason. Oh, well, the intelligent people know French. It's so sophisticated, it's in French.
She spent the last 6 months in the Free Shire, staying in the most expensive room available in Big Town.
Mm-hmm.
She can't afford another month at this lifestyle without seeking aid from family. So, how do I know her?
Well, that's a good question. She's been hanging in town. It could just be like just bar buddies. She hangs out at the tavern that you like to go to after
Where
work.
am I? Where am I living? Did we decide where I'm living?
Well, I believe you said you want to just go ahead and live with poor accommodations. I wrote that down somewhere.
Yeah, but does that mean
options.
that I'm renting by the week or?
Yeah, well, I think that could cost you something like 6 gold a month. Is the general like expense for the whole? Yeah, poor 6 gold a month to live at poor, 30 gold a month to live modestly, 60 gold a month to live comfortably, 3 gold a month if you want to live squalidly.
Which I do not.
Okay, so
yeah,
poor.
So I picked poor.
So
yeah.
you can your character might have to does your character have roommates, or do you just live in like a really small little cottage?
Boarding house,
or
yeah,
a
tiny
little cottage. I mean, you've been there for a while, so you're probably not living in a boarding house, I would imagine, not after like a decade of working as a blacksmith in Big Town.
So then I would have roommates, or is it really tiny personal level?
Just a tiny home. That leaks when it rains or something.
Like out in the edge of town or in the middle of town? Are there sewer systems at this point, or are we just pooping in the streets still?
Big Town, no. Like I said, Big Town's a little ghetto.
Right.
So, whereas in Hampshire, like they have fully designed, like built by the Dwarves Guild aqueduct and
like
sewage.
At what point could you afford to live by yourself in that kind of?
Because you don't have another choice. This is where you're allowed to live if you want to live and work in the Shire.
Yeah, I know, but
if you don't like, you can go back to
You wouldn't be sharing
Sheepfold.
dwelling spaces with people?
You could, but also this is a fantasy world, so I mean, and like I guess
I'm just trying to imagine, like, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to imagine my dwelling place.
Yeah.
And I can't. What did I drag mud out there? Was it art? Did it already exist?
Well, that's probably something built or something that you're renting. Like all the land and buildings are owned by halflings, so you'd have a landlord.
Is it like an apartment style thing, or is it like its own separate
I don't that's picture the Shire from The Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They can have connected.
Well, I'm trying to think what their kind of architecture might be, but what they would I don't know. I pick in my head. I just see those little kind of round, old-fashioned kind of houses with thatched roofs. Mm-hmm. Just real simple shit made out of local materials. Whereas in Hampshire, it's all nice stone masonry and paved streets, and even have lanterns and stuff at night and. Some it looks like some quaint medieval, nice German town in Bavaria or something. Whereas outside in Big Town, it's mud streets and raw sewage and buildings made out of wood or mud bricks and that stuff where they take mud and straw to make stuff. Whatever you call that.
I don't remember what you call that,
but yeah. So it'd probably be something like that with a dirt floor, maybe some a carpet, modicum of furniture.
Sure.
Or they could have. I don't see them doing apartment complexes. I could see they have a duplex or a quadplex kind of thing, or
just
a larger building cut into 4 subsections for people to have their own little unit.
Cheaping out in that way. To try to.
access to
I mean,
outhouse.
once you're access to an outhouse.
Yeah.
An outhouse.
Yeah.
Okay, and so if she's in like the fanciest boarding house in town, is that going to be closer to the center of town, or is that going to be farther out?
Well, she's not the fanciest. I mean, there's like I said, it's nothing more than comfortable accommodations here, but not wealthy or aristocratic. So she's probably like whatever the local inn is. It's probably like not so much in the center,
most expensive room,
but
available.
like you know on the map how like it's probably on like that road as it goes into the center. It's probably somewhere like not really on the edge, but not really in the middle, but like along the main thoroughfare.
Okay.
It's probably where like whatever main inn is, and she's just been renting like the nicest room in it for months now.
Okay. What reasons do I have to go there?
It's probably the main bar in town.
Okay.
Because it's.
What about, is there... Okay.
And a place to get food that's prepared.
Yeah, that's
nice.
what I was going to say. Is there other kitchens?
It's like, you know, I mean, you haven't been working at the guild, so you're not like poor. You're living squalid so you can afford to feed yourself and have stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're not living beyond your means. Maybe that's part of why you wanted that promotion is you can maybe upgrade your lifestyle and instead, like, no, it fucks up your budget. So... planning on stealing from like the company coffer and running, so maybe you had like bought all this stuff for yourself so that you can like be when you ran away and left the Shire, you know, you didn't want to be out there defenseless and stuff. So yeah, maybe you cobbled enough together to invest in some adventuring equipment, but then your heist went down badly.
Right. Yeah. Well, especially, maybe, like, you know, she had money saved up. How expensive are these items?
Depends. Let's see. Well, I can see if, like, light leather armor, that cost you 10 gold for your armor. A rapier cost 25 gold. The daggers were 2 gold apiece. The short bow was 25 gold.
Okay.
So you're already close to pimping like 100 gold and shit. Burglar's pack is worth 16 gold. I mean, yeah, you got like over like 100 gold's worth of equipment there. And miscellaneous items.
Well, since I came with that stuff, I was assuming that I would have needed it before, but I wouldn't have needed it before in my life. Unless I was planning on going rogue.
And like almost 50 gold's worth of tools between the smith's tools and the thieves' tools. Also, there's a thing in classic you always have with role-playing games because of the whole concept of encumbrance. Is like, yes, characters based on their strength can carry X amount of pounds. But is that realistic to what someone, like, do you always walk around carrying your maximum capacity? And it's also there's it's not just the mass, but it's the volume issue. It's like, yes, you're physically strong enough to carry all those weapons, but stop and try to visualize you having 5 swords, a battle axe, 6 daggers, a spear, a bow staff, a bow and arrow. Even right now that you're walking around with a rapier, 2 daggers, and a short bow and quiver, seems a little like
bulky,
cumbersome. And that your friend has the exact same equipment. Except she has a short sword instead of a rapier. But also, like, you're both just walking around with a sword on your sides, daggers on your hips, and each got a bow, and, you know, all that kind of just like,
Yeah, and a pack with rope and rations and candles. And...
But also, like, you know, like, you're allowed to sell shit. You know, you can sell any of the equipment you currently have, anything you find, you can, you know... I tend to, like, try to discourage too much fucking looting of bodies, unless it's, like, obvious magic item, take this kind of shit, but, like, you know...
You discourage looting of bodies?
Yeah, there's some things about the setting that your character not being a magician isn't familiar with, but it's not good to, like, offend the dead. Because that tends to, like, lead to haunting kind of shit. Like, the character is not aware of it, but like this world is like this is an aging, dying world, and so it's close to this energy realm called the Shadowfell, which is kind of where undeath comes from. It's the opposite of the Feywild, where life force comes from.
Okay.
And so yeah, like overly disturbing a body or offending the spirit might cause it to raise back as a zombie, or it might cause a ghost to appear and cause people problems and crap. And so generally, like, people try to like respect burial rituals and not go out of their way to like rob people of their possessions even in death, unless you're an asshole and don't give a shit, because you're not sticking around. So what do you care if this bridge is haunted? You know. So.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of purposely designed the world that way just to stop the murder hobo shit, because also it's like, I don't want to have to figure out the fucking equipment for every last random goblin you'll hack apart. Let's just say his rusty little sword isn't worth anything, and you're not going to bother carrying it.
Yeah.
How about that?
Well, yeah, that seems like it would discourage people from murdering everybody. I never get anything good from murdering everybody.
Yeah, and like next time you come back by there, you're being swarmed by the zombies of all your previous victims.
You get sent back to deal with the zombie uprising that you created. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions, really.
All right.
Until we're playing, and then I'm like,
what's going on
wait,
again?
what?
I forgot.
I don't know about that. But
Okay. Well, currently, the character left off. She's in Hampshire at whatever municipal building courthouse thing. It's probably like the courthouse, the jail, the sheriff's offices, maybe even the mayor's office is all in like the same building. Although the mayor's almost never there. He stays at his manor or whatever.
okay.
And yeah, so I'll just pick up with. You want to like jump straight in with like opening right into the middle of the interrogation scene, or do you want to role play through her like
Getting back
invited?
to the...
Well, like we ended off like you got back, he paid you.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, you know, that first play was like, it was not like even really ran with the attention like, for sure this is just going to be an ongoing campaign now. This is just like, I just wanted to get across what D&D
had
was.
a clear ending. So should we start with a new beginning?
Of sorts. Like
where I do actually get invited
to come interrogate
still
this
try
guy.
to forge my relationship with this sheriff.
Yeah.
So I've gotten back, and he's like, "Here's your reward. Thanks. We're done here." And then we pick up from there, and I'm like, "Well, what if we're not done here?"
Well, I'd figure he'd more like inquire if you want to continue with working on this, or is he going to need to find someone else to do? So, and you'd probably be invited to go along to the interrogation. So, like I said, it could just start off like hard cut, cold open interrogation room.
I'm fine with that.